Hi Mark, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. We've got loads to dig into, but perhaps for our listeners, just to provide a bit of context to sort of your background and skill set, perhaps just give us a whistle-stop tour of how you arrived here today, and I don't mean by car.
Yeah, absolutely. So I set up Global Gaming Solutions about 12 months ago now, which focuses on gaming consultancy in the Isle of Man primarily, but we support the jurisdictions as well. Prior to that, I was at a CSP for 10 years, which is where I learnt my trade. One of the largest CSPs in gaming on the island. And I just thought, because of the way the sector was going in the Isle of Man, very strong at the moment, and has been for the past 24 months. So I thought it was a great opportunity to set up Global Gaming Solutions and work with clients on a more of a boutique basis, giving them, sort of personal touch, working with them very closely. They have my WhatsApp number, they can call us at any time. Basically making sure that they get the maximum results from our services and for their business as well, most importantly.
So we'll dig into a little bit more of that in a moment. Just to go back, when you started your career and went into a CSP, having come from a CSP background, did the gaming take an interest, or was that within the firm at the time, that was just the sector and the interest or the particular sector you?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting actually. So the CSP that I was at was primarily yachting, no gaming whatsoever. And then a few years into my journey there, a lot of the yachting business went up to Malta. So the CSP had to diversify into other sectors. One of them being e-gaming. At the time, there was another CSP that was very much foot in the door in the gaming space. So it took a while, to get the relationship with the government, with the Gambling Commission. And then, once we got the first client through the door, it sort of snowballed from there. And when I'd left, they had, I think, the most licenses, if not close to the most Isle of Man licenses under their belt. So it was always it's an exciting sector, especially when you've been to the conferences where, it's all loud music and everything else that comes with that, drinks at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But even working with the clients themselves, they are great to work with, can be quite intense at times, but it's a fast-paced sector, and you have to adapt, especially from, being in the yachting sector, which, you can sometimes, you don't end up speaking to the client on a daily basis. You might, if it's a small yacht, but certainly with the larger ones. Whereas in the gaming sector, certainly with operators, you're speaking to them every day, trying to support them where you can.
So we talk about the Isle of Man. Why gaming companies coming here? What's the drive to come here? So
the Isle of Man, the license has been there since 2001. When the legislation was enacted. I think at the moment we're going through a very busy time, and that's due to the Isle of Man has always been tier 1. It's always the license has never been tarnished. The GSC have done a great job of maintaining that credibility, along with digital agency as well. I think certainly over the past few years there's been changes in other jurisdictions, grey listings, which has ultimately worked in the favour of the Isle of Man. Another thing which the Gambling Commission did was come up with the software supplier licence back in 2019. I could be wrong, but around then. And that was, at the time, a slow starter, but now it's seen as sort of a badge of credibility for software providers. And I thought it was a great idea for the GSC to come up with that, because now we're seeing a lot of software suppliers that need this license to be able to engage with some of the the top name software suppliers such as Evolution, Pragmatic. If you want to resell their content, you need an Isle license or a tier 1 license. So I think that has definitely helped.
So that license isn't mandatory, is it? But it's
correct. Yeah. So if you're a software supplier and you create your own content, you don't need a license to sell out of the Isle of Man. But if you want to resell some of that tier 1 content, such as Evolution, they will need you to have a license just because they want to know that they're dealing with a credible business. And certainly over, like I said, the past 12, 24 months, we've seen a lot of software supplier licenses go on the register.
And I think it's fair to say they're not super, people listening, they're not super burdensome licenses to obtain.
No, not at all. I think it's important to work with the right people based on the Isle of Man. Obviously, that's something that we can do, but there are others that do that, because the GSC, they expect a real complete license application, the business plan, policies and procedures, financials. It's important that the client provides a full detailed source of wealth, because ultimately the GSC want to know that they're given a license to a credible business, and that there's nothing that business is going to do to tarnish the Isle of Man's reputation. So yeah, and once you got that license application together, it's 12 weeks from submission for you to get the license. So a lot quicker than other jurisdictions, which again works in favour of the Isle of Man.
So we look at the service you provide, and going back to your comments earlier, then that walking clients through that process.
Yeah,
I suppose part of that application process, as an outsider looking at it, you want to make sure that it's robust as on day one when it arrives to the regulator, because they don't want a half-arsed job, should we say. They want it, so that's the value added. We know what they want, we know what they expect. Let's walk you through and handhold you through that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen personally the GSC change their approach over the years, and I think that's come because there's the traffic, the volume of applications going through to the GSC has increased by quite a lot. In some instances in the past, the GSC, if they've seen like not a poor standard, but a few gaps on the application, they would just go, yeah, we need this, help us with this. But now they're taking an approach where, if it's not a completed application, they'll push back. And to the extent where if you pay your application fee and the application's not good enough, you can end up potentially losing that application fee that you paid. So yeah, it's so important now to make sure that the application that goes in is complete, to make sure that you're working with people that have submitted applications previously, because like anything, there's a few tricks and bits and pieces of information that you need to know. One thing is that they still require wet copy application forms, which and a lot of places now it's electronic, but you still need to do that. It's super important. And if you're submitting an application without them, and then you're trying to get them couriered from the other side of the world, from Asia, it can just slow the whole process down. So as I said, it's so important to submit a complete application to make sure that you don't risk the losing the 5,250 application fee.
Obviously you're Isle of Man based, and you've got a relationship with the regulator as well, so I'm sure it's I mean, we know the regulator, and they're very open to conversations and having conversations to guide through.
Yeah, exactly that. They are. I've travelled with the regulator to many conferences over the years, whether it be ICE on the stand there or Sigma. Great team, but of course that's the business development side, and then when we actually work with the regulator as well, you're right, it's there's not many regulators out there where you could just email them and say, look, we want to come in to discuss this, and they'd welcome with open arms to discuss it. They're very much open door policy, want you to communicate with them, and they're a regulator which as well they adapt. So we touched upon before this we started about the crypto side of things. Crypto is, I'm not going to say new because it's been around for a long time, but as it comes into our sectors, they put some virtual currency guidance notes in place a few years back to help operators that wanted to use cryptocurrency, whether it's they're a fully crypto operation or a fiat currency operation that wants to make use of payment service providers that allow players to deposit in crypto but then flips it into fiat for their operation. And they've just updated their guidance notes again over the past few weeks. So they've been ahead of they've been on the ball for quite a while on this, and it all helps towards why the Isle of Man is a great place to have a business, because they're sort of forward thinking to make sure that any of these modern sort of developments, tech developments that the Isle of Man can accommodate it.
So we touched a moment or two ago on the software side, on the B2B, B2C. What are you seeing there? Is it a bit of both coming into the Isle of Man?
Yeah, I think at the moment, certainly from what we've seen, and we did, I was speaking to a colleague of mine yesterday about the license list, and I think because we always like to know, who's new on the list, whether it's operator, software provider, or which sort of CSP is helping them. We're seeing a lot of software providers at the moment. That's not to say that operators aren't coming through the door, because they are. But I just think the way the software supplier license is sort of gained a lot of credibility, and it's become quite an attractive license to have. And, as it happens, it spreads around all the software suppliers, and their competitors find out they've got that, and then they all jump on the bandwagon. Yeah. So, so more software suppliers, but we are seeing operators as well.
Okay. So let's change the subject a little bit. Let's talk about going out on your own. What stage did you feel? Obviously, it's a big jump ultimately. Putting food on the table.
Yeah.
What triggered that thought process, and what made you make the step? We think about young entrepreneurs wanting to make that step.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been ambitious. I think the guys from my previous CSP would always say the same. When I did hand my notice in at my previous CSP, it was obviously a bit of a shock. But the CEO, COO were quite supportive of what I wanted to do. Although they didn't want me to lose me, but it's something that I've always wanted to do. The reason for doing it is it was a good opportunity, I think, because the Isle of Man was busy and I knew that it was sort of calculated risk that go out. It's a good opportunity to do it. There should be clients there that we can help, with their license applications or regulatory compliance, operational support. And I felt there was a bit of a gap in the market as well to, provide a real hands-on sort of boutique service. As I mentioned before, we want to give them the absolute personal service where, they can probably contact us on weekends, worst case scenario. They have our numbers, contact us at any time, and ultimately it's a service which from day one we said this is going to be a personal service levels are going to be at the forefront of what we do, and that is what we do. And that is why I feel like the past 12 months we've managed to continuously slowly grow our client base, and all our clients are satisfied with the service levels.
So let's talk about the growing side then. The network, is that and maybe bringing marketing into that as well. It's like, what was the plan on day one in regard to that?
Yeah,
again, thinking about people that might look daunting going out on your own. How do I generate business?
Well, to be fair, it was quite funny because when I did put my notice in, I went on holiday a few weeks later, and I remember just being sat in the sun lounge just thinking, "What are you doing? What are you doing, Mark?" But yeah, obviously it was very daunting. I started completely from scratch. I didn't have any income coming in. It was me relying on my savings with no support. But yeah, I think because I'd been at the previous CSP for 10 years, I'd had connections that I'd met over the years, lawyers in different jurisdictions. I had an idea of other lawyers in other jurisdictions as well, which I'd reached out to. Might not have met before, but I'd still, I needed to really reach out to not only people in Malta, I'm looking at other jurisdictions as well, Curacao, and further afield. So it was very intense. And to be honest, it's still quite intense because I need to make sure that the level of business is still coming in.
Is it different than what you expected? If you look back,
yes, it is, because it's not only the client stuff, the client work that needs to be done. It's clients are one thing. I've got to run global game solutions as well, and obviously there's a lot that comes with that. But obviously, really enjoying the journey. I think the most important thing was getting the first couple through the door, couple of clients through the door, so I could pay the mortgage, of course, not relying on savings. But yeah, it slowly progressed from then. In terms of the business development side, I'll always go to the main conferences. So just come back from Malta last week. It'll be Amsterdam in July, Lisbon, September, Malta, November, and then ICE will be Barcelona. We'll always do them. And Tom will come with me to Lisbon because it's a bigger conference. We might do a few trips in between, maybe to Malta, without a conference being there, because there's a lot of contacts in Malta. And then in addition to that, I think LinkedIn's quite important these days, certainly on the gamer front, because everyone seems, from the game sector, seems to be on LinkedIn. So, we've got a LinkedIn page there, which is, we're maybe hitting 2,500 followers, coming up to that point anyway, which I'm very happy with, considering we've only been going 12 months. I did not expect those figures after a year, but we've been quite pushy on it, making invitations. I want to get content out there, that's useful for some people. We always put posts up, if I've gone to a conference, just to show that we're there and, we're still in the sector and still doing what we're doing.
Yeah, interesting. And again, looking at whether you had a marketing plan on day one, or has that been organically kind of grown as you've kind of fed your way into growing the business?
Yeah, well, it's one of them where, because it was only me at the beginning, I've got a marketing cap on, business development cap on, every cap on. But I did actually have a marketing plan before we went live. So put together quite a few different articles. We published through Digital Isle of Man, European Gaming News. We did some articles on our own website, and then it was obviously pushed out through LinkedIn as well. So yeah, there was a plan there. I think it helped definitely get the name out there, because we did get some inquiries on the back of our launch, which was obviously great.
Yeah.
On the website side of things, we try and do, it's a pretty basic website. Articles go out there which are adapted for SEO, to try and drive the ratings up. But I appreciate that takes time, unless you can spend tens of thousands with an expert who's going to help you get so far.
Yeah. Can I ask how long you mulled over that decision? Because obviously you mentioned having 5-6 different hats on, like anyone starting a business. That maybe it's for me getting old, but obviously you're still young. It seems very daunting. As if I was, and I only look through my lens, of course, at 28, I'd have been like, couldn't even try this. So how much mulling over of that, or are you very much like, because you're driven, you're just like, I've got to have a go at this. I don't want to sit here at 40 and regret this.
Yeah, I think the latter. I just thought what's that saying? Take the risk or lose the chance, or something like that. And I just thought, I've not kept. There was a lot of factors. It was a really real calculated risk. I've not got kids at the moment, so I've got the time to commit to it. The game sector is quite strong right now. I've got support of family as well, support of parents, where, if things did go wrong, then I know they would be there to help and support. And as well, the worst case scenario in my head was, if it goes wrong, the gaming sector is a busy sector on the Isle of Man, so it would be, should be able to get a job. If in the worst case scenario. So it was a calculated risk, but I just thought it's now or never.
What would you say a couple of big things you've learned since that maybe you didn't anticipate? There's probably a million things, but
there's a lot of things. It's a difficult question. I think the work that you've got, I knew there'd be a lot of work to put in. That's an absolute given. But there's, having that many plates to spin at once, especially when you're starting from a standard start. But at the same time, my job is now my hobby. I feel like I'm not going to work at all. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be tough days, and there have been tough days, but there's also great days as well. But yeah, I feel like it's cheating a bit. I work from home Monday and Friday, and sometimes, certainly at the start of my business, I was pretty gutted that it was coming up to a weekend, because I wanted to be working between Monday and Friday, because that's when people are going to reply. So it's been a challenge, learning just everything in terms of the company side of things. When I first started, I'm a previous CSP, I had a bit of couple of years in accountancy. I think I couldn't have done it without my previous CSP. That's without saying, because I worked in a few different departments. So, as I said, worked in accounts for a couple of years. So learned how to read a set of accounts. Then it was in admin. Then managed a team in yachting, gaming, and then the last role that I had in there was like commercial manager for the group. So, which was more business development. I was working with a guy now who is very good at business development. So in that year, I learned a huge amount from him. How to go to meetings with people and close business, and I think all of that combined together created a lot of.
And out of interest, that journey, then, if you look at that, do you think, like, I'm quite interested to know, if you objectively look at that, your pathway there, do you think that you got to that position of these different experiences through, by, let's say, luck or your own drive, just created these kind of learning opportunities, which then created the big opportunity?
I think I do look back and think, I have been lucky, but at the same time, I've always known that, because my parents are quite entrepreneurial, they've got their own business and what have you, and I've always thought that I want to be doing something like that. I want to have my own business at some point. I think when I went and did accountancy, I just thought it wasn't for me. I was looking at the admin team and I thought, that's a bit of me, that, speaking to clients on a daily basis, you get different things thrown at you on a daily basis as well, and travel and meeting people. And when I seen that, I actually then shifted into the admin team, then gaming come on to the scene, and then that really got me excited. And at that point, probably 8 years into my journey with my old CSP, that's when I thought, I'll definitely do something in gaming on my own. And then it come down to it, and there was never a sort of right time to leave. But as I said before, it all sort of come together where I was like, now's the time to do it, now or never.
Yeah, very interesting. It's interesting just talking about that kind of journey. Hopefully people can relate to it. You mentioned Tom, working with your brother.
Yeah.
So maybe let's talk about family dynamics. I'm sure it's a 50-50 relationship in regard to the business. Yeah. So it's I guess we were talking about it before we came on air. I think working with it can be fine at times. I'm sure working with colleagues or loved ones, etc. But at times it can be difficult. How have you found that journey with your bro?
Yeah. So it's a funny one with Tom, because when at my old place, he was there as well. And before Tom joined there, he was at another CSP in the gaming space as well. So it's not, some people might look at it and go, oh, you've just got him because he's your brother. But in fact, he is very good at his job. He's got years and years of gaming under his belt, and I know, what a person he is. I think it's quite important, because there's two of us at the moment that you've got to be able to trust that person, and he's got everything. I can trust him. He's really good at his job. He's attentive, and I think that I don't think there's a better person to come in that role. So very lucky on that front that he has been in the gaming sector for that long, and he's also the right fit and someone that I can trust, because ultimately if I go off island to these conferences and I need someone to be able to pick up the work that I can trust, and he is the great fit for that. I think on the family side of things, we keep work and family completely separate. We're going on to my mum's and whatever, and I've got two other brothers as well.
Right.
And it's just strictly family, and when we're on work, we're on it.
And you and Tom quite wired similarly?
Very similar, as in with my other two brothers as well, but we are very similar, very alike. We've got the same interests, running, football, both support Everton, unfortunately. So we share the pain on that front. But as a great all-round person.
Yeah. Interesting. So just on the sport bit, I'm interested in obviously things and see a small startup, but also being in a big business as well. When we look at well-being in the workplace, and so we're an advocate of sport. Do you do that? I mean, why do you do sport? Do you do it for the team, the social, the community side, the well-being side? What's your motive there?
I think I've played football since 5, whatever, and I still continue to play because I just love being with the lads. Played for Braddon, great club from top to bottom. So I love the just being with the lads, the team effort that goes into it. We've had a bad season this year, but I'm sure we'll bounce back. We've got a very young team. I'm one of the oldest. We've got a few lads that are 18, 19. Oh, not a few, quite a lot. I've no doubt that next season we will bounce up. I think on the running side of things, that is great for busy day at work, stress, go for a run, stick your headphones in, and it's like a reset. It's very good, and sometimes it's easy after a bad day just to go on the sofa, order a takeaway and watch telly. But reality is, I find personally that if you get out on a run, it is a reset, and I need to do it. Otherwise, I just feel a bit, you feel a bit slobbish. So, yeah, love the running.
Cool. So you mentioned earlier, we just touched on briefly on crypto. So obviously it's a fairly, like you say, we use the term new in the concept of wasn't invented yesterday, but kind of 14 years in. But they're starting to bleed into sort of everyday, let's call it more everyday life.
Yeah.
The banking sector having to adapt to it.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you seen the regulator and the regulations and gaming community move into that space?
Yeah, I think certainly over the years, the GSE, we touched upon before, that they have been following this closely for many years. They brought out the virtual currency guidance notes, which, I think it puts the Isle of Man in a good place when it shows that they're, taking interest in crypto many years ago, allowing players to deposit in crypto. It opens up a lot of opportunity for the operators because, in some of these jurisdictions in the pre-regulated markets, you and I would deposit using our cards or Apple Pay, but some of these jurisdictions further afield, they don't have that. They can't do that. So, depositing crypto is something that they can do. In these, at the moment, I feel like it is used quite a lot, but I do think over the next few years it will become increasingly more popular. I think that we say it's new, but it's not. But I think as people, the young generation, and get older, they'll know, and then the new young generation will crypto will just be like cash to us.
Yeah.
And I think as time goes on, more and more will use it, and then who knows, it could overtake cash, cards. Yeah.
I need to thank you because you use the word us as though we're in the same age category. I quite like it. So maybe just to finish off, and it touches, I suppose, it flows out of the crypto, the landscape and the future for game and the Isle of Man, what you see and what you're talking to clients about.
Yeah, I think the future is bright for the Isle of Man. The license list over the past 3 years, I believe, has trebled. And the most important thing, and this is when I'm speaking to clients, when I'm speaking to other local CSPs, Isle of Man comes first. No client is ahead of the Isle of Man, and that's the way it always has been and always will be. It's important to make sure that the reputation of the Isle of Man is kept where it is, because that's why the Isle of Man is such a popular gaming jurisdiction. As I said before, there's other jurisdictions making changes left, right, and centre. So I think the Isle of Man will just continue to do what it does, and because of all these other changes, some of those clients will come to the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
I think not only just the GSC, there's such a good infrastructure here. From the data centres, local banking for software providers and operators. You don't get local banking in other jurisdictions. So there's not only just the government, which are great, the CSPs and service providers, the whole infrastructure is here and welcomes gaming. So I think that is something else that just adds to the Isle of Man.
And I suppose that those businesses eventually want a footprint here. I guess there's grants to get people here.
Exactly.
And all the support mechanisms around that.
Yeah, definitely.
And do you have much interaction with that for yourselves, or you very much, like we talked earlier about the application process, you'll tag on ongoing support service? Maybe talk about that. Sorry, I know that was my last question. Would you talk a little bit about that as well, that ongoing support?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the clients that we deal with, it can be a startup or it can be a large enterprise. But yeah, we lay it all on the table for them, because it's so important that not only if you've got the GSE that, be out there at the conferences saying that, we welcome gaming business, you've got to Isle of Man, but also, like you said, you've got these grants, which, just show that additional willing from the government to try and drive these businesses to the Isle of Man. So yeah, once depending on which type of client they are, if they're going to have offices here, if they're going to relocate staff, which we've seen many a times, we will put them in the right direction. And I think that's where the digital agency is great, because, so I've got an account manager at the digital agency, as will you guys, but then we'll introduce them to our clients. So if they are moving to the Isle of Man, that account manager will be their sort of hand-holding individual from government, which will then tell them about the grants, tell them who to speak to, what they need to do and then hold their hands the whole way through to getting their grants. So yeah, the grants are very important, especially for businesses that want to relocate here.
And that once they're here or moving here, there's maybe an incubation period while they're setting up. That support services that you guys can offer around that, directorships, things like that. That's again that you can either whether it's a long-term fix or a medium-term fix. I guess that's services that you provide on that client journey.
Yeah, we can't provide directors because we're not a CSP directly. But we provide the regulatory support, license applications. We've got the contacts in the government and the regulators. So yeah, again, we are also similar to the government, where we will basically just hold their hands, get them to where they need to be, introduce them to the right people, and if they need anything else, then of course
that long-term partnership, the value added they need it. Interesting. Okay, well, thanks for your time, Mark. Really interesting insight and really interesting entrepreneurial stuff there and the journey you've been on. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Martin.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Poor flimsy humans. Don't you wish you were flawless like me? A towering inferno of physical perfection?
I hate to pop your blimp-like ego, but you're not perfect.